Welcome to the League of Women Voters of Wake County Virtual Candidate Forum for the Raleigh City Council District E. My name is Cheryl Tung, and I am a member of the League of Women Voters of Wake County. The League of Women Voters of Wake County is a nonpartisan organization dedicated to empowering voters and defending democracy. We encourage informed and active participation in government, help citizens increase their understanding of major public policy issues, and work to influence public policy through education and advocacy. As a nonpartisan organization, the League of Women Voters does not endorse or oppose candidates and is proud to continue our long history of hosting candidate forums. The views, opinions, and content expressed in this presentation do not necessarily reflect the views or policies of the League of Women Voters. All candidates who filed to run for the Raleigh City Council District D were invited to participate in our candidate forum. Outreach included emails, phone calls, as well as certified letters inviting candidates to respond and provide citizens an opportunity to learn about their views. Thank you to the candidates who are with us today. The City Council of Raleigh's governing body, consisting of 8 members who are elected for 2-year terms. The City Council sets city policy, enacts laws, and adopts the city budget each year. The current fiscal year 2025 budget for Raleigh is $1.43 billion, an 11.8% increase over the fiscal year 2024. The budget covers strategic plan actions. The general fund reflects a 13.1% increase to $732.2 million, covering the city's workforce, programs for the vulnerable populations, and addresses growth and inflation. Other items this year are an alternative response program, affordable housing, and Dix Park operational cost. 3 of the City Council members, including the mayor, are elected at large, while the other members are elected from 5 districts, A, B, C, D, and E. This year, District D is uncontested, so there is no candidate forum for District D. This candidate forum is for District E. District E candidates file to run for election within District E, live in, and represent District E. Today, we welcome candidates for Raleigh City Council District E members, John Cerquera and Christina Jones. District E begins in the center of Raleigh and runs diagonally to the northwest corner of Raleigh. All District E candidates live in District E. Welcome, John and Christina. Thank you for joining us today. We will ask every candidate for the Raleigh City Council the same questions. The number of questions is either 4 or 5 questions, depending on the number of candidates. Your candidate group will answer 5 questions today. The questions will cover a range of issues relevant to the scope of the council. The candidates are listed in alphabetical order by last name. The speaking order is: the opening statement will be answered by the first person's first speaker. Question 1 will be answered first by candidate number 2, and so on. Before we begin, I would like to verify with the candidates that they have not received the questions in advance. Can you verbally confirm?
Yes,
I've not received the questions.
Wonderful, thank you. You will now have 1 minute for an opening statement. So John, please go ahead.
All right, great, thank you. Yeah, I'm John Cerquera. I grew up in Durham, North Carolina, went to Jordan High School and NC State in 1997. Upon graduating, my first job was on the 81st floor of Tower 1 of the World Trade Center. I was there during the terrorist attacks, and my boss and I helped a woman who was a wheelchair user out of the building and got out 5 minutes before it collapsed. That resulted in my being awarded the Order of Longleaf Pine from Governor Easley, which threw me in rooms of a lot of public servants. And so I started doing a lot of nonprofit work and have a career in ethical communications. Now I'm a change management consultant helping organizations solve complex problems in a way that serves all constituents. I helped spin up a skate park in downtown Raleigh, and I'm focused on, as we grow as a county with 50 people a day moving here, housing to absorb the demand, public safety to ensure that we have enough police officers and close our 100 officer vacancy, and parks and greenways so we can all connect and thrive. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, John. Okay, Christina, you can please go ahead.
Definitely. Thank you so much. My name is Christina Jones, and I'm the current District E representative on City Council. I've been here for 2 years. My background is in community engagement, and I was the former chair of the Citizens Advisory Council. My most proud moment so far has been on February 6, 2024, being the lead in the motion to bring them back and reinstate them. And I know we got a lot of work to do. That was just the first step, and it's about bringing community voice to issues like housing affordability, which we've been able to bring about 300 units of affordable housing to District E, which is the most expensive. The next issue is workers' rights, making sure that we are paying our employees a livable wage so that they can live in the city. And then finally is community engagement. I've done that throughout by having monthly meetings up and down Glenwood Avenue to make sure that residents have an open communication line with me. And I look forward to continuing that into the next term. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Christina. We will now move on to the question part of the forum. You will have 1 minute each to answer each question. We know that Raleigh needs more housing. However, we've observed that increased housing construction often results in gentrification. How would you propose the City of Raleigh balance the construction of additional housing units with the displacement of current residents? Christina, you have 1 minute to answer the question.
Thank you so much. This is definitely a city council concern in our zoning process. A few cases where I have seen that happen, whether that's in District D or District C, and it's about having that communication and upfront discussion of what gentrification means and how bringing that to an area is impactful. We're doing that on the New Bern Avenue corridor as we bring BRT, because that's a big concern for residents and for council. Instead of doing one big parcel for 744 properties, we've actually separated that down. We've said, you know what, let's take it chunk by chunk instead of making this big assessment. So it takes continued observation as we look at every case and making sure we're hyper specific as to what we're bringing to an area. In addition, we're partnering with our development community. And like I said, in my district, which needs to participate a little bit more in that housing affordability solution, we're trying to bring partnerships with developers to increase that opportunity all throughout the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. John, you now have 1 minute to answer the first question.
Yeah, sounds good. So I draw from my background. I went to business school at UNC Kenan-Flagler and took classes specifically in partnership with the planning school on urban planning. So that gives me the experience to understand where things get built, how we absorb this demand of 50 people a day moving to Wake County, and it all comes down to planning. It all comes down to gauging how much demand is going to be here, not next year, not the year after that, but 10, 20 years down the line, and determining where is the most appropriate place to create density. Most urban planning canon says that urban density, which is the most efficient way to absorb demand, happens in the urban core. Now, we know that we need to be mindful of everyone in the urban core, both the historically under-resourced groups that tend to be in Southeast Raleigh and some of the established neighborhoods that are more affluent that are less amenable to development. And so it's about a planning process where everyone's engaged and we know what we're doing. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, John. We'll now move on to the second question. We have seen an increase in crime, particularly homicides, over the past year. However, some neighborhoods are more affected than others. Raleigh police are challenged in dealing with this increase. What should the city be doing to help those communities that are experiencing higher crime rates? John, you have 1 minute to answer the second question.
Yeah, thank you. It all comes down to staffing, which all comes down to pay. We have 100 vacancies in our police force, and some suggest that that's based on a staffing model that's about 200 or 300 people less than we need. And so these officers are hard pressed to serve every community, particularly those that are most susceptible to crime. We need to pay those police officers more. I know there was a budget that went through that raised police pay. Some voted for it, some did not. And I've been endorsed by both of the police unions because they see me as the best path to advocating for police pay so that we have a staffing level that's appropriate to police all of our communities so that we all feel safe and we're all free to enjoy our lives.
Thank you, John. Christina, you have 1 minute to answer the second question.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. My sound went out. I'm so sorry.
Oh, that's
Um,
okay.
in terms of police, most definitely, we are in a shortage of about 400 officers as to where we should be for our population. So that is definitely one solution. But on the same track, I can't hire 400 people in a budget session in 1 year and 2 years. So what we've done is we've added different community response teams. So we've got the alternative response unit, which you mentioned. So thank you for that. And we also have our traffic calming measure, because the idea is also to take off some of the responsibility for officers so that they're not overburdened. At our CAC meetings, our officers are super excited about our civilian traffic unit, because they're able to take some things away from them. The work that we have begun on our traffic response unit for civilians and our alternative response unit is in an effort to relieve the police of what they are responsible for, as well as supplementing them with their pay and benefits. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Christine. We'll now move on to the third question. Raleigh is a city of neighborhoods, and we are seeing an increase in neighborhood concerns over growth versus overall city economic development. How do you balance the needs of those impacted while providing economic benefit for all residents? Christina, you have 1 minute to answer the third question.
Thank you so much. That's such a big question. It's what we're grappling with. It's how do we balance the need for growth and getting housing for all of this 50 to 60 people moving here every single day, but how do we balance it with neighborhood growth? I think our comprehensive plan has laid out that plan for the urban densities, which include places like North Hills and Briar Creek. And so in those areas, we are definitely trying to absorb more of that density to avoid the overgrowth and into neighborhoods. Along with that, we have done our missing middle, which has brought up a lot of concerns from existing neighborhoods. And that's not just in the density, but it's in what that density causes, which has been a lot of stormwater concerns in a lot of my district, including 5 Points. And so as a city, it's how are we putting those guardrails in? How are we measuring success as we move forward? And that's through our next text change. Our missing middle text change is what we're trying to address some of the things that before we weren't able to. So it's a multi-pronged answer, and we have begun those processes. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. John, you now have 1 minute to answer the third question.
Yeah, thank you. So balancing growth as it pertains to impacting neighborhoods while also having economic development. Yeah, so we need to absorb the demand that is growing and will continue to grow. There's an argument that this housing crisis is going to get worse before it gets better. And so we're going to have to plan where this influx in population is going to go. That includes the comprehensive plan. It includes adjustments to missing middle. As it pertains to economic development, economic development is a way tax dollars in from people who don't necessarily have to live here, right? So convention center expansion, that brings tax dollars in so that as we grow our population, our individual taxes don't go up. And so as we have economic development, by better job opportunities, by better convention centers, by things that bring people downtown, that tax revenue gets generated outside the rest of the city. And so that's the way we would balance that.
Thank you, John. We'll now move on to the fourth question. The City of Raleigh budget has increased 11.8% over the last year. At the same time, many residents feel we need to hold the line on tax increases. As a member of City Council, how would you balance the need for affordability in taxes with the need to increase salaries of city staff and first responders? Christina, you have 1 minute to answer the fourth question.
Sure. Thank you so much. It was a big tax increase this year. I was one of the votes against this budget due to partly the increase in that, plus the county's increase in taxes. And so I completely understand that concern. I've heard that from residents all over. The balance that we have in such a growing city is that need for the money just doesn't go anywhere. We have to be able to allocate it to the services that we need to provide for that influx in residents. So there is this give and take that is really hard to balance without having that community conversation. We started it last year in our participatory budgeting process, which begins again this year in October. And our initiative is to make sure that more people come so they can show us what those wants and needs are. What came out of the last one was the alternative response unit. But technically speaking, we are paying for things like homeless shelters and with our affordability, both in the county and on the city level. So that's something that we need to have further conversations with our county partners.
Thank you, Christina. John, you have 1
Mhm.
minute to answer the fourth question.
Yeah, thank you. This question really is addressed mostly through smart growth and planning. When we talk about absorbing the demand in housing, we're also talking about where density goes. Density that is in a downtown that can be stacked on top of one another, where infrastructure already exists, where transportation already exists, where grocery stores exist, ensure that not only do people who live in a downtown not have to create sprawl or don't have to get too far for their services, but that tax revenue is actually the most efficient tax revenue driving the base per acre. And so smart development so that we drive a tax base in the most appropriate places along with economic development is how we create tax revenue so that we can pay for all these services throughout the city. And so it's about smart ways to increase our tax base without having individual taxpayers having to come out of pocket.
Thank you, John. We will now move on to the fifth and final question. The City of Raleigh budget process has been criticized by some as lacking community involvement. What strategies would you support for increased public input in deciding how money gets allocated? John, you have 1 minute to answer the fifth question.
Thank you. So Cheryl, as you laid out what City Council does, one of the top three things they do is vote on the budget and influence the budget that comes out of the city manager's office. Knowing that and planning for that means that we should be pushing for an understanding of what the key needs are in the city, how they get kind of stack ranked within that $700+ million of the 1.4, and get that budget refined earlier so that we can share that with the citizens and get some community input that should have been happening all along. I'd like to start that process earlier, hold the city manager accountable to doing that so that there's enough opportunity for first drafts and iterations so that we don't feel like we're on the back foot when the budget comes out. It's a complex document. I know it takes a long time to dig through, and I think that should be influenced by the citizens that that budget serves.
Great. Thank you, John. Christina, you now have 1 minute to answer the fifth question. We can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to yes, the budget has been a big learning curve for, over the last 2 years in my first terms on office. It has been what has felt more like a closed off process because we don't get to talk to every department, nor do we get to set the agenda of which departments present in front of us. What that's led to is that we don't see our biggest ticketed items, whether that's police and fire or parks. They have not presented in front of us. So a strategy that I'm working on for the next one is to lay out which departments and when they come for discussion, which would lead to more community engagement so that they understand what the requests are. And that's all in addition to our participatory budgeting process starting again this year in October, just like it did last year. Again, the push for us is to get people involved and interested because, as soon as you get that tax bill, you're very interested and we can't retroactively change it. So I want to be on the forefront of that and get more people involved in the October meetings so that we can have a better and stronger conversation throughout the budget cycle, which will begin in February.
Thank you, Christina. We will now move on to closing statements. Thank you to the candidates for coming today to participate in our virtual candidate forum. We recognize that running and serving in elected office is a considerable commitment of time, energy, and often sacrificed opportunities. The League, along with the residents of Wake County, is grateful that we have so many capable fellow citizens who are willing to step forward and serve the important duties as a member of Raleigh District Councilors. You now have 1 minute each to make closing statements. And John, we will start with you. Go ahead.
Very simply, between my formal education and understanding how cities grow responsibly, my professional experience actually creating budgets, and my civic experience having the opportunity to move forward a public-private partnership in the city, I think I'm well-versed. I believe I'm well-versed to serve the district better. I think Christina has a wonderful heart. I think she's a beautiful person. I don't think that the opportunities for improvement are based on a will issue. I just think there is a learning curve and there is no handbook for city council. And so it requires having somebody that has some transferable skills from other contexts to apply in a professional setting with an organization.
Thank you, John. Christina, you now have 1 minute to make your closing statement.
Right. Thank you so much for having me. This has been a great forum. I am super excited to be continuing this journey down towards the election of becoming the counselor for the next term. I faced a lot of challenges in the first year, but what I have also done is built those relationships with our partners at PNC, relationships with the developers and the builders in the community, as well as the community organizations who are there ready and willing and interested in doing the work. What I love for District E is the ability to continue that leadership structure, because over the last 3 elections, we have moved back and forth to new counselor to new counselor. And what happens is the lack of institutional knowledge. There's a lot that everybody can bring. And John is a great person. He's got a great personality. But the things that you would have to start back over learning are what I want to help keep that continuity. I think we've lost things in big things like BRT, and our district is never included. And I attribute that to the lack of continual leadership. So I hope to continue my position, and I hope to continue representing District E.
Thank you, Christina. As we end our forum, we encourage you to visit our website, vote411.org, to learn more about the candidates on your ballot and to find out the latest information on polling place hours and locations. Please make your voting plan for the upcoming election and encourage your friends and family to vote as well. Thank you again for joining us.